Hey, it's Bound to Divide here with the Ableton tips, and today we're going to be building a track completely from scratch. And we provided all the samples linked below so you can follow along if you want. And we've done one of these previously. It's one of the first videos on this channel. It was a lot more basic though. This one we're going to get a little bit more involved with sound design. I think the last time we just used presets, so this is sort of like a step up. I'm not going to be explaining every single button I push, so you should already be a little bit more comfortable with Ableton. I would say this is geared more towards intermediate producers that kind of have made a few tracks in Ableton and know their way around the interface. So we're going to focus a bit more on, the arrangement and sound design and all of that. Okay, so once you got all of these samples, we should be ready to go. All right, so first up, we're just going to start off by the same way I always start a track, and that is to create like a pad or just something in the background that's filling it out with harmony, and that way it just makes it so much easier to write a melody because you have this like harmonic bed that your melody can sit on, and I just find it more inspiring really. So I've got this pad MIDI that I've prepared here, and just to explain this really quickly, the thinking behind this is, we're going to be writing in D minor, and that's over here we've got like a perfect fifth. So A is the fifth of D because the D minor chord goes D, F, A, and then I've got these like little sparse random notes here, and the whole point of these is to kind of just create some different harmonies that sort of pop in and pop out, but they're not going to be very obvious because it's going to be soaked in like 100% wet reverb, so you won't even hear them unless you're listening for them specifically. And I like doing this just to create some variation in the harmony through that loop. So let's make like a paddy sound for this, and I think for this I'm just going to use Wavetable, and let's just open Wavetable here. Okay, so I think the best idea here is to use the saw wave because it's nice and it's full of harmonics. It's a nice thick waveform, and I also want to use unison. So at the moment, if I just turn this down, this is what it sounds like. So yeah, not very inspiring. If we add some unison, we can put it on the shimmer mode and then increase the voices to maximum H here. Now we get like a nice wide pad, and we can detune it as much as we want using this amount. There it's basically almost out of tune. Sounds a bit eerie to me, so I want to dial it back a bit. I think I like it at 26, and I want the sound to move quite a lot, so I'm going to assign a LFO using LFO1. I'm going to assign it to the pitch to kind of have it almost like get a tape effect where it's kind of going in and out of pitch very slightly. That's obviously too much, but we can go into this LFO1 and dial it back a bit. So we can bring down this amount. And we can also go back to the matrix here and just decrease the amount here to like 4. It's like it's moving too much, so let's just bring down the rate. Let's bring down that amount even more. I only want it to be very, very slight. And let's thicken up the sound, so let's add a second oscillator. We're going to make this a saw wave. And then we transpose this down 12 semitones. Let's turn down the volume of this. And I want to kind of just soften the attack a little bit, so how we do that is we go to envelope, or this amp envelope, and I'm just going to increase the attack, and now you'll hear the sound kind of fades in a bit more if I bring it up really high. Then it takes a long time to fade in, but that's a bit long. Let's just soften the attack, so like that. And we'll also bring this to a fully sustained sound. And I think I'm happy with that. So now we can use this filter to take out that high end. Make a nice dark sound. And we can also bring a little bit of life into this by using the LFO to modulate the frequency cutoff. So if we go to the matrix here, you can see I've been playing with this frequency cutoff by dragging this up and down, and it's created a new lane over here where it's allowing us to modulate this filter 1 frequency. So I could assign LFO 1 to that, but that's a bit boring because then it's going to follow the exact same pattern as the pitch, which is like a bit, you know, it's a bit predictable and it's not as fun and as alive. So let's use LFO 2 and just increase that. Now that's not at all what I want, because it's like now turning it into this big like wub wub wub. I want this to be moving really slowly and evolving over time. So we can go to LFO 2 and adjust that. Let's first of all bring down the amount. And then let's set the rate pretty slow. Let's set it to the triangle wave. Maybe we can adjust the shape to make it like a bit less linear and so a little bit less predictable. And then I just want to bring down this resonance. I don't want much resonance in the sound. And then we can automate this frequency cutoff once we start arranging the track. So we can, over time, open it and close it and make it darker and brighter. Okay, so I think the core of this sound is good. Let's just soak it in reverb and then EQ it. And the reverb I want to use is called Black Hole. And if you have Ableton Live Suite, it should come with it installed, but you might have to go to packs here and install convolution reverb. And if you don't know how to do that, you can just go to ableton.com and install it there. But yeah, it's free and it should come with Ableton. So if you just search Black Hole and then go to, I think, convolution reverb presets. Here it is. Double click on that. Let's soak it in 100% wet. And let's just listen to how that sounds when we like run it over these little melodic areas. So now you can hear exactly what I meant. Like you can barely hear that little melodic change, but something is changing in the background, and it just helps keep the track interesting. Let's EQ it a bit. Let's just decrease this these lower mids here. Maybe boost a little bit up here like that. Okay, so now we have almost like I would say a drone to work with. So let's just name that drone. And now let's get into the melody, most important part of the track. And we've got two ARPs here, ARP MIDIs. So just drag ARP A on here and ARP B. And let's plan this out already. So let's create a 16 bar loop. Yeah, so that's 30 seconds. And I think what we could do is maybe alternate between these. Let's do 8 bars of each pattern. So this is pattern A, and then this is pattern B. So you can see the difference between these two is I've basically just taken this note over here, the C, and just lifted it up to a D in the B section. So we've got a bit of variation there, which is nice. So I'm going to take these and then just duplicate this across, and it might help to just color this slightly differently so that you can clearly see which one's the A and which one's the B. And then we need to make a sound for it. So for this I want to use analog. I really like Ableton's analog for these kind of like RP synths, just because it's a bit more convincing than Wavetable is, in my opinion. And let's just hear how it sounds out of the box. Okay, so yeah, you can hear it's just basically a saw wave at the moment. And so what I want to do is kind of like turn it more into a plucky sound using this filter. So how this routing works in analog is you have the oscillator, which is positioned here on the left, and then it runs into the filter. And so we can use this filter now to basically shape the sound. So let's just bring down the frequency of the filter, and you'll hear this. If we play it while we're doing it, you'll kind of hear exactly what it's doing. Okay, so now we can control like the length of the sound using the filters envelope, which is this thing over here. And you can see if I just click and drag this around, you'll hear how the sound gets longer and shorter. I can also click and drag this to make it have less attack, so the sound sort of like fades in and becomes like a whippy kind of pluck. Okay, so the sound at its core is what I've just done here. We're not going to create some crazy sound by just using the controls inside here. What I want to do is process after the synth to kind of create the interest in the sound. And the first thing I want to use is a chorus. And I love the sound of choruses. I think they just make everything sound better. And I've been using them quite a lot lately. So yeah, let's just listen to how they sound. So here we can increase the amount to exaggerate it and hear it. Let's just play with the rate. You'll notice that sometimes choruses make it sound like it's going out of tune. And adjusting the rate you can find like a sweet spot where it sounds good. Like there, it starts going out. And there it sounds good. And you can also play with the width, and I think around 80% sounds good. Let's just try this warmth. Yeah, let's bring that down there. Yeah, I like that. And then next up, we're going to try and add a little bit of distortion. It's always nice to add just some sort of distortion to pretty much any lead sound that you have. It just brings it a bit to life, because the way that the distortion will interact with each note at different pitches will be different. It just by default brings life to the sound, which can often be really dead and like mechanical sounding if you just have a plain saw wave and you haven't done any sort of like distorting or processing like with the chorus. So yeah, there's many different types of distortion you can use that come with Ableton. If you go to, where is the audio effects? Here we can go down to drive and color, and you can see there's just tons of different ones you can use. And there's a few that I tend to go to for this, and one would be saturation. Another is overdrive, which is kind of a lot more crazy than a saturator is. You have to be quite careful with overdrive. And then erosion's one that's really great on drums and stuff, and we'll probably use that later on. But I think for this sound, let's try some overdrive. And what I like about overdrive is we can choose to distort certain frequency bands using this filter. So if I play this down here, we're going to be distorting the very lowest harmonics in the sound. If we have a look at this EQ8, we're going to be distorting these low harmonics, which can sound kind of ugly. But if we move this to the high end, we can kind of just add some grit to the sound. But at the moment it's just too much. The amount of drive and the dry wet is too high. That's kind of making the sound really thin because of this filter. So what I want to do is just dry wet to bring in those lower harmonics again. Let's bring down the chorus a little bit. Let's try putting the overdrive before the chorus so that we're not distorting the chorus, we're only distorting the raw sound. And then let's add a little bit of delay to it. And I'm just going to add ping pong, and we'll just bring down this dry wet. And we can also narrow down the frequencies that are being delayed. And if I set this to 100%, you'll hear what's being delayed. So now you can hear I'm kind of like EQing the delay to make it darker or brighter. I think I like it there, so let's bring back the dry wet. So the purpose of me setting stuff to 100% wet is always going to be so that I can hear only the effect and dial it in, and I'm not kind of like being distracted by the dry signal. And then once I've got what I like, then we dial it back to the percentage that we want. And then let's just add a little bit of reverb to this. I'm just going to use Ableton standard reverb here. Yeah, so about 40% and then 2.6 second decay sounds good to me. Maybe a bit less wet. And then we can also play with the resonance of the filter and the frequency here. So if we bring down the frequency, often what's really nice in a sound is to have a lower frequency amount. So here I'm just automating by clicking on frequency and then clicking on this red line that pops up. And you got to make sure you're in automation mode by enabling this. So click on frequency, make sure that this blue button is toggled, and then you can automate stuff. So drag this down. And now we can hear what happens, and then we can start adding curves. And when we have like a really dark filter, so it's quite closed, adding some resonance can sound pretty cool. And as it opens up, that resonance starts sounding a bit like a laser in the higher frequency. So I like to, if I'm opening up my filter, I like to close down that resonance. So the best thing I think to do here is to just click on this plus sign so that we can automate both things at the same time. And let's click on this reso, and we can automate that going down. This one going up. Then maybe we can snap this one down again, and this one up here. And maybe that's a bit abrupt. Let's make these curves. And if you want to make curves in automation mode and you don't know how to do that, you just hold Alt on your keyboard and you can click and drag and make curves like this. So let's hear how the sound works now with the pad. I'm just going to turn it up a bit. Yeah, so you can hear that that resonance really adds a lot of character to the sound. Okay, so that's it for now with this sound. We'll probably come back and tweak it while we're arranging it. But let's continue and make sure that we save. Okay, and then next up, what I would usually add from here would be a bass line. I just find it easier to create my bass line while I've got my melody going. Okay, so this bass line has like a one note run up before it reveals the full bass line. And so you can see that's how our arrangement's gonna go. We're gonna have this intro where we're just hearing this one note, which is the D here, which is the tonic of the scale that we're working in. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say tonic, you might want to check out our course that would be linked below. We have courses on harmony and all the basics of music theory, but just to gloss over it, the tonic is the first note in the scale. The scale that we're working in is D minor, so D is the first note and it's called the tonic. So yeah, let's just focus in on this area. I'm just going to loop it again. And now we're going to create two parts to this bass line. It's going to have a sub and it's going to have a mid-range bass. So let's first make that mid-range bass. And I do this because I like to separate my sub and my mid-range so that I can control the volume of each one separately. And you'll see why that comes in handy a little bit later. So let's, for this bass line, I just want to use analog again, and let's just turn down the volume here. As you can see, this is too high up. This is like where your lead would be. So now what we can do is we can just go into the synth and just turn down the octave here. And let's just work with one oscillator at a time at the moment. So I'm going to switch off OSC2, turn that off, and then I'm going to turn down the octave of OSC1 by hitting the down arrow here. And I'm going to look at an EQ and make sure that my lowest peak is sitting in this range below 100. And that means we are you know, we're in the sub frequencies, and it's typically where bass lines sit. So at the moment it's, yep, that sounds right, it looks right. Okay, but now we don't want this buzzy plain saw wave, we want to do a little bit of sound design on it. So let's start off by bringing down the frequency again, take out the high end. And then we want to shape this envelope. I don't want it to be so plucky, but I want it to have a tiny bit of pluck, so I'm just going to drag the square up. So we can see it does decay a little bit. And now you can hear like there was a big volume change in that note. So if we just go into the MIDI here, we can see that this high note, if you look at these little dots here, has got a much higher velocity, which is why it's being played so much louder. So let's just highlight all of these, Control A, and then we're going to drag up the velocity for all of them. And now they're going to be all the same volume. Okay, so yeah, that sounds better. Now I want to take out a little bit more high end, so I'm going to just use this EQ to take that out. And I'm going to boost this mid-range a little bit just over here. These like lower mids. Because I find that the sound sounds a bit too, like it's just feels like it's lacking frequency over here. Okay, so now what I want to do is just make a sub bass for this. So I'm going to take out some of the sub frequencies over here. And it's not too much, we're just taking out to about 150 Hertz. So there is still going to be this low harmonic, but it's super quiet, and we're going to fill that in with a separate sub bass. So I'm going to duplicate this. Let's just rename this top one to mid bass, and this one to sub bass. Let's just call this our ARP so that we are aware of all the different things. And I don't like this coloring, so I'm just going to change them all to this purple over here. There we go. Much nicer to look at. And then for the sub bass, let's open up this EQ again. I can actually just turn this first EQ off and bring down this second one here, this second node. Okay, and for this I want to change this to a sine wave. I prefer to work with sine waves for sub. And then if we go to this amp envelope, I'm just going to bring up the sustain on the sound here so that it's the sub bass doesn't have that pluck in it. There we go. That's all I pretty much want from the sound, is just a plain old sine wave. There's not much sound design that goes into this. I might put a saturator on there just to bring up a tiny bit of harmonics in the sound. So you can watch the wave, the EQ over here, and you can see these higher harmonics start to come in as I increase the drive. But that's obviously too much, so we just dial it back. And we can go to this filter and just make sure that's fully sustained. Okay, so you can hear there's a little bit of overlap in the notes. There's this like weird effect that's happening when you change notes. This boom, and that's because the notes are overlapping. And the reason for that is for one, this is a polyphonic synth, so we can play two notes at the same time, which is not typical for a bass line. So we can either make it monophonic, or we can bring down the release of the amp envelope so that the notes don't overlap anymore. Here you can see this, as I turn this down, this square moves towards it, and that means the release is going to be really low, and we probably won't hear any overlap. There we go, so it's gone now, but I think we can set this to mono. I need to double check where. Here we go. If you click on this box here where it says volume, you go to voices and you can make it mono. And then even if you do have some release on here, so we bring that release up again, we don't have that problem anymore where we have the overlapping notes creating that weird effect. So here we can go, and we can also increase the attack slightly just to make this sub not so like punchy. There we go. Okay, so I'm happy with that now. So now we can control these independently. So if I turn down this mid bass, and we can control how much of mid bass we want in there, and we can also control how much sub bass we want in there. And we'll come back and adjust the volume levels of those once we've got all our drums in and stuff and everything is working together. Probably a bit too loud at the moment. Yeah, probably something like this. I want to add a tiny bit of width to this mid bass. So let's just add that chorus again to this mid bass. And let's go into the amp envelope and just give it a bit of a longer decay. So we can increase the decay here. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, and we've got some other MIDI that we need to do, still add in here. We've done the pads. We've got this piano melody, which is kind of just going to back up that arpeggio. So let's drop that in there, and let's just bring this down to here. And what we're going to do is just loop this whole section. So make sure you got the loop brace turned on, and then we can zoom out and just bring this down so it's only going up to bar 9 here. And then if we drag this across, it'll just loop it. And for this, we're going to be using the Ableton Grand Piano, and it's just this one here. So you can hear this melody kind of just supports everything else really nicely, and it's almost at the perfect volume the way it is. The velocities are quite low, which is what I want. I don't want it to sound like someone's slamming away on the piano. And it's pretty quiet, which is fine. We can control the volume within this using these macros. I think what I want to do is just add a little bit of delay to it so that like the gaps between the notes are filled in a little bit. So let's just add some delay here. I only want to just get the mid-range of the piano. And we can make it ping pong to make it a nice wide delay. If you have this situation where you can't push it any louder but you want it louder, I don't recommend pushing this above 0 and going all the way to 6 because then you just run out of room. So I just drop a utility onto here and put it into the chain here, and then we can use the gain here to turn it up. So here you can see there's a little bit of variation just to take us into the next bar where we are shifting this E up to the A. And we're also shifting the D down to the C here. And this was all just pretty much done by ear when I was planning this track. I just thought it sounded nice. There's no real like music theory about why I went from the D down to the C and from the F up to the A. It was all just done by ear. And then we've got another piano that we need to add in, and I know this loop is starting to get really full, but it's nice to always, I find, do a little too much in your loop. And then when you start arranging, you have so many options. You can just start removing stuff that you don't need, but you don't have to go back and start writing new things while you're arranging the track, because you've got a nice full palette of sounds to work with. So let's drop these piano chords in, and I'm going to steal the piano from here and the utility, and just copy this and paste it onto this channel. So at the moment the piano is a little bit bright for me. I don't like that, so let's bring down the brightness and the tone. And I also want to EQ it a bit. There's a lot of bass in the piano and we've already got a bass line, so we don't need that bass. It's just going to muddy things up, so we can take that out. And I also don't want this like strong high end. Okay, I think that sounds nice. Let's add a bit more reverb to it. Okay, and we also want to loop this, so make sure that your loop brace is enabled, and then you can just drag this all the way out. And we have got some more MIDI to add in there. And so this bit that we're about to add in is called the Climax background lead, and this is just going to be like towards the end of the track. We're going to add this lead in, but it's going to be sitting behind everything, and it's just going to lift the track harmonically into a new place. So for this, let's use wave table, and we're pretty much just going to be using a plain old saw wave for this, but what we're going to do is push it right to the back of the mix using reverb. So if we turn this on here to a saw wave, and then bring down the filter to take out some of the buzzy high end. So you can hear how that like really complements the track and kind of find it quite uplifting to it. So let's enable some unison here, and we'll put on this shimmer unison, add some voices to it. Bring down the amount to like pretty low, around 9%. And we can try playing with like resonance here. That might sound nice. I think it would be nice to modulate that with an LFO. So let's go to this LFO on the matrix here and just assign it to filter frequency. And we'll go to this LFO and then just bring down the amount and the rate just to some arbitrary number that's pretty slow. So one thing I don't want this LFO to do is re-trigger the way every time a new note starts, the LFO resets. So you can see this thing jumping at the same time every time there's a note change. And I don't like that. So what I want to do is turn off re-trigger. Okay, I like that. I think that's good for like the core sound. So now what I want to do is just like use delay and reverb to push it to the back of the mix. So it's kind of really washed out. out, and then we're going to use that black hole reverb again. So just search black hole and use this one. Let's try bringing it really up high. Bring down the dry wet on this a little bit and on this too. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then the last thing we need to do is start to add drums, I believe. And then we can arrange it. We've also got some other samples here, like this duduk. That one, and then I think there's also a string sound. And I missed anything? Yeah, some vocals. But I don't want to add these in yet. I want to add them into the track while I'm arranging it, because they are going to be there to kind of spice things up when they start to feel a little stale. So if we start arranging it and then we feel like it's getting a little bit boring, then we can throw one of those in and it kind of just livens the track up. So let's start doing the drums first. So first up is going to be our kick drum, and let's just group all of our instruments here into an instrument bus. So I just selected all of them and hit Ctrl G. Now we're going to rename this instruments. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a sidechain on this instrument bus. So what we want is this compressor here. And then we'll get back to that compressor once we've added our kick drum in, because we're going to be sidechaining all of this to our kick drum. And we just go to kick and then to our folder here. We're going to be adding in this kick. And then I've just double clicked to add this MIDI note. So I'm going to be adding a kick on every quarter note. And what I'm going to do is, just to save time, drag my loop brace down to a quarter note like this. So now you can hear that the track and see that it's clipping and distorting. So it might be good for us to just turn everything down. And I prefer to turn down all my tracks like this by highlighting them all and then just dragging it down rather than turning down the whole instrument bus. I just like to always have my buses set to 0. I don't like to control volumes using the bus volume. Okay, so the kick is kind of like being squashed by everything else. So let's just turn on the sidechain here on the bus, take audio input from the kick, and then we can drag this down. And I want to work with like a sharp curve. So I'm going to bring up this frequency so that we're only using the incoming signal of the high frequencies in the kick. So you can see as I increase this, that curve will become, if you're looking at the peaks over here, it'll become a bit sharper. We can control the release too. We can control the length of the sidechain using the release. I think 50 milliseconds is usually about where I like it. And then I'm going to go into the sub bass, an even stronger sidechain on the sub bass. Maybe a little bit longer. Okay, let's bring up that ARP a little bit. EQ'd this. Let's just throw an EQ on and see if there's any problems with the melody here. Yeah, so there's a bit of rumbling down there. Take that out. And let's EQ this sound too. some like harshness up there that I don't really like. Just taking that out. And I want to EQ this kick slightly. Taking out some of the mid-range from that kick, and then maybe boosting the attack a little bit. Okay, I think that's good. Let's add our clap next. Add a new MIDI channel here, double click, and then we're going to be bringing this down to 2 quarter notes, and then just, oh, what am I doing? Double click on clap here, and then we're going to be adding our note here at C3 on bar 1.2. Okay, so we're just adjusting the volume as we go, mixing as we go. What I like to do is just, I want to kind of feel the clap, but I don't want it to be in my face. Okay, that's fine for now. And then we're going to start adding in a shaker. Let's add a shaker loop here. And just drag that out. And I forgot to increase the BPM. I don't want to be working at 120. I actually want to work at 124 for this track. So let's just increase that to 124. And then we can mix this shaker in until it sounds like you can feel the shaker. It's kind of just filling out the sides a bit and providing a bit of rhythm, but it's not like in your face. So now I want to add the hi-hats, create a new MIDI channel, and we've got 2 hi-hats, and that's because one hi-hat shorter than the other. I'm going to use that longer hi-hat to build energy in the track. So that's our long hi-hat, and we've got another one. That's the short one. So let's add the short one first and just get that at the right volume. So go here, and we're adding it basically between each kick, so we can shorten this to a quarter note, and then just add it halfway between the 2 quarter notes, and then loop it all the way to the end. Now, I don't like the harsh transient on this sample, so what I'm going to do is just go into controls here and increase the attack. So it's a bit more like almost like a shaker now, but I think it suits the track better. Okay, and this up, I feel like I want to EQ it slightly now, just hearing it with the hats. I feel like I want to increase the mid-range a bit more on the up. And turn down this hi-hat a bit. Okay, let's add our next hi-hat, and to save time we're just going to duplicate this one and then basically swap out the samples. So take this 909 hi-hat and throw it in there. And we're going to remember that now this attack of this has been softened in the same way the other one has. So we need to just go back to the controls and bring down the attack and, you know, adjust it appropriately for this sample. I think I like the original attack of this, so I'm going to leave it at 0. And I'm going to bring down the volume quite a bit on this. take out a little bit of that mid-range on it, so let's just EQ it. We can also EQ it here, but there's no visual representation of the harmonics, so I prefer to use this EQ8. And I want to just take out some of that like really low, use this like mid-range stuff. Okay, and then yeah, we've got this ride loop, so that we can just drag that in and just set up the volume. Okay, and then we are just missing some sort of like a percussive loop, I think. So what I want to do is just go into my sample pack quickly and find one of those. It's top loops. And I'm just going to listen in context. I like that. I think it's got this nice like alternating sort of like push-pull feeling, but I don't like the high end of it, so we can EQ this a bit. Let's just drag it out, turn it down. And we're just going to grab an EQ and take out that harsh high end. And the lower end of it. Turn up this clap a bit. Okay, so now I think we can start arranging this track. And so the first thing I like to do when I arrange is to just take this is basically our full loop, is take all of this and just set it to the side, and then I can drag and pull stuff. Think of this like your palette of colors that you're ready to paint with. And now I need to create this empty canvas. So I can just highlight a bunch of bars here and hit Control-I, and it's going to move everything over to the right. And let's just think tracks are going to usually be around, I don't know, like 4 minutes long. So we probably want to create some more space in here. Let's see how long this is. Yeah, let's Control-I again. So now we have this big empty space that we can work with and arrange our track in. So I'm pretty much going to go from left to right here and just create the intro first. And my intro I want to make like for DJs. So I want to have drums in the intro, but not all my drums. I don't want to spill all the beans right at the beginning. So we can drag this out and it should loop everything. Yeah, everything's looped and displayed there. And let's just listen to this. Okay, so in the intro, I probably don't want my ride loop. My ride loop's probably going to be saved for the climax, for all that energy. And I probably don't want the big open hi-hat, this one. It's just, I'm just going to switch that off by hitting 0. And we also don't really need this percussive loop. Let's just drag this over here. Maybe that could come in like after a minute or so, or after 30 seconds. Let's maybe bring that in there. And we can probably just start off with the kick-out clap. That's a pretty standard way, and this is the purpose of this section is just our DJ intro really. And so 16 bars is pretty standard for a mixable part of the track for DJs. So just a DJ intro over here, and then basically start our real intro here. And what I want in our DJ intro is to just slightly start fading in that main pad of ours, just to create some like atmosphere. And another thing we can do to create a bit more atmosphere in here is to add a texture. And I'm only just thinking of this now. And there's some nice textures in, what is that pack called? Sticks and Stones. So here, this Woodlands pack on PML, they have some field recordings. Something like this would be really nice because it kind of puts the track into a realistic space. So make sure you don't warp it, and then we can just mix it in really quietly. And you can hear that's like immediately just put the track into a really realistic space because we've got like these forest sounds. There's a lot of rumbling down here. I'm just going to take that out. And I also want to just compress this a little bit. So I'm going to grab this glue compressor. Sometimes you'll find in field recordings there could be like a bird that's like 5 times louder than all the other ones. And you don't want that to jump out at you out of nowhere. Just compress this a bit. Okay, and I don't want this drone to be as obvious as it is now. So what I'm going to do is just filter it down. So now we can start automating the frequency. I'm going to filter it down to almost right to the bottom. And we're going to just drag this across. And now I'm going to just turn on warping again, just so that I can use the loop function. And now you can see it's only looping just a small part of this. I want to use the whole thing because I like to have a lot of variation in my field recordings. And we can just drag that out as we need it. Okay, another thing we can do is we can just shorten our clap in the intro, take out some of the tail of it. So I'm just going to use the sustain and just bring that down to here, and then we can bring it up, you know, as the track moves along. Let's also add a little bit of reverb to our drums. I'm going to put them all into a bus, and then I'm going to send them to reverb A over here. And this is too much. So what I want to do is take out some low end first of all. Shorten this. And then we're going to mix it in. Okay. So now everything just feels a bit more like realistic because everything's been put into a space basically. Okay, so now another thing I want to do is just take this kick, and I'm also going to bring down the sustain on that so that the beginning doesn't have as much sub on the kick, and then we kind of bring the kick in maybe after 16 bars. The full kick can come in. So let's just automate that in. And we can create a little bit of a gap where there's no kicks here. Okay, this over here is a bit too loud, but in the context of the full track, it felt like the right volume. So what that tells me is we just need to automate the volume. I'm going to grab a utility here, and just in the intro, I'm going to basically turn it down so we can highlight a whole section and then just use these boxes to control the automation. So here I'm going to bring down the whole thing like this. Oh, sorry, that's the shaker loop. My bad. We need to put this onto here. So again, click on the gain so the red dots come up, and you can just highlight a whole section and drag this down. I think it makes sense to bring this in first and then bring in the shaker maybe later on in the track. That just gives us more options for variation if we don't, reveal too many things at the same time. So I'm just going to drag this out to the right. I'm not sure when we're going to bring it in yet. And then I feel like this is where the main track starts. So we've got basically a 1 minute of intro, and then we're going to start bringing in the main part of the track, which is going to be like the main ARP, the main bass line. Let's just check out this bass, and I'm just going to copy this across here. Same thing with the sub. Okay, so I think I want to bring these in over here, because this is the main section where we want our bass line to start changing around like that. Okay, so initially we probably don't want it to be so obvious, so we could fade in the sub bass. Let's use an auto filter and just take out the sub on this. And we can automate this so that over time it kind of starts fading in, we get all the sub, and then right as we drop into the track we take out some of that sub, and then yeah, just like that. And I also don't want so much mid bass in the intro, so I'm going to use another auto filter and just take out that high end. And then we can maybe start fading that in like this. Okay, let's start introducing an element of like a melodic element here. We can start introducing, I think this piano melody would be cool to start showing. Yeah, let's start introducing it here in the intro. And I want that to fade in using an auto filter. And I think, at least for this part, I don't want to hear those variations because I haven't even really heard the full, haven't really gotten used to the sound yet. So let's... It might be cool to actually fade this in right from the beginning, just because it's so repetitive, it's not going to really make the mix any harder. Maybe on this marker here we can start fading in that up, so that by the time we reach the main section we're kind of used to the up. So let's just copy that across. And we don't want that there, let's just delete that. And you might have noticed that the analog frequency here, the automation hasn't been copied over, and that's because this button is enabled. So I'm going to turn that off, and then if we copy it again we'll get all of our automation. Okay, I kind of feel like, you know, it's too much the way it is at the moment. It just comes in too suddenly and it's like in your face. So I'm going to use this auto filter to just fade it in. So as this track progresses, I want this to kind of just grow, keep growing. Let's see how long this main section is. Yeah, it's 1 minute, so that's fine. And let me just duplicate this across like this. And now I want this auto filter to just keep on opening up over time, eventually. And maybe this analog frequency we can fade up to towards the end here. And let's just add a new lane for each of these things we're automating. Go back to the analog, and then this resonance, I like how it goes up and down, but I don't want it to be the same all the time. And because this is rising in frequency, if you remember I said the resonance doesn't sound good to me when the filter's really open. So I want to keep that resonance down towards the end. Okay, so let's just go back to this thing, because if you remember, there are variations that I kind of cut out by bringing this down. So let's reveal the full loop here. Or maybe what we can do is use this as a variation for the breakdown. So I can copy that across, and then we do this loop through there. So I'm going to color this slightly differently again, and well, not slightly differently, very differently. And then, yeah, when we get into this breakdown, it'll be a relief when we hear this little change. And we can probably also introduce the main piano chords as we get into this breakdown here. I kind of feel like the piano chords will sound better in this section if we don't have this chord coming in so early, but rather somewhere like over here. And then if we wanted it to go back to the way it was in the drop, we can always do that. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's just hear that. Actually, I'm not sure. I think it sounds better like this. So for this section, I think we should carry on with this shaker loop. Something doesn't feel right, and I think it's because I'm kind of bringing this piano chord in a bit late. It should probably, the whole sequence should be starting, you know, at the same time as this one starts. So something like that. That's quite a long break between these two. So we would need something to fill this in. I think what we could do is bring in this sub bass or the mid bass and kind of fade it in the same way that it happened in the intro. So what I'm going to do is just copy these both over, and then we can just cut out a little portion of them to bring these notes back to this point over here. So I can go here on Ableton. I always forget the hotkey for this. Edit, delete time. Oh, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to just cut this section out like this. Delete there, and then bring that across. And then maybe we can start fading in this bass here. And we can't hear it because I think this note is being cut a bit short. Yeah. Zoom out, you can see the note needs to start here on that point, and same with this one. Yeah, I had this loop a little bit short, so maybe that was what was creating the, making it feel like it was out of time earlier. All right, let's drag this across, and I think my breakdown should probably only be about a minute long. So we gotta try and figure out how we're gonna get back into the drop. Actually, this would be a good length here. A minute over here, so it's a minute and 17 seconds. And if you don't know how I'm seeing that, I'm looking at the bottom bar over here and just hovering over the highlighted area. It tells you the duration there. Yeah, so let's just drag this out. And just keep this going. And now we can probably start fading in this our climax backing lead towards the end of this breakdown. So let's copy our full drum loop, because we're going to be dropping in here to this full drop loop, drum loop. And then I think this drop shouldn't really be like all the energy. I'm thinking we should bring this climax lead in maybe after 16 bars or 8 bars or something. And maybe we can take this ride and the percussion loop out, and let's just hear how this feels. It might be cool to just like hear only that piano melody. And our bass, I'm just going to copy this section out, paste it over here. Maybe we can fade out the sub here. And we can bring this pad in again. Yeah, I think that works, but the problem is there's quite a lot missing from the track at that point, it feels, because we don't have this harp to fill it out. So yeah, I might layer in this harp nice and quietly. Let's just grab it and pop it down here. And maybe we can start fading it in. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. We can use this auto filter again. Yeah, I think what we can do is create a bit more energy by using this this sequence, this sort of B section, and duplicating that across. Clearing out all this. And we'll just keep this open and like keep the energy going. Let's just find that resonance again. I don't want that resonance to rise up again, so let's just bring this down. Duplicate this across because I want that same arp to just keep going with all that energy, and then we'll drop back down into that old pattern again. Maybe we don't use this long hat here. Okay, so we've got like, that's 32 bars that I've just highlighted. So let's just put a locator there, and then we'll put another one here so we know where the middle is of that drop and where the end is. And so I think we need to start fading the track out here and getting ready to let the DJ mix out of it. So I'm just going to insert more time there with Control I. And what I want to do is then I want to create like this big finale where this arp it grows and then completely fades out. So let's just take this resonance down and then just let this frequency, analog filter frequency, open up completely. Yeah, and then maybe what we do is we drop down into the tonic of the scale here with this bass line. So onto the D. We can use this piano melody here. And then we'll just remove that climax melody. we need that ARP to kind of like have a nice long delay tail so that it doesn't just feel so unnatural, like all the energy suddenly stops. Let's go to the ARP here, and maybe what we can do is just have another delay on there that we're only using right at the end, and we just fade that right in to like 50%, a nice long feedback, and on top of that maybe another black hole, and we also fade that in. Okay, so I think what we need to do here is to just duplicate this again, and I'm going to lock this automation because I don't want it to reset as I duplicate it, so that now, for example, the slope hasn't repeated over here, and I want to just keep fading it out. And then, you know, this part, this 16 bars is for the DJ to mix out. So by the time we reach the end of this, I want the bass to be pretty much completely gone. So starting over here, we can fade out that low end, and it'll be completely gone by the end here. And we can also start fading out the high end of the bass. We can use this pad, but I think we should fade that out. And I want to make this a little bit wider, so I'm switching on fade because when I change these amounts I don't want to hear the delay repitch, even though it'll only happen once. But if you take this left and right and you change the percentages here, it unsyncs the left and the right, so they're landing at slightly different times, and then it makes that delay nice and wide. Okay, then we've got some crashes and stuff, and I think we've also got the vocals and the duk-duk to still add. So what I'm going to do is listen through this and kind of just place them when I feel the track is losing a bit of steam. Yeah, let's keep that field recording in there, and maybe what we can do is just fade it out a bit towards the end. So it might be nice to add like that string sample in there. Where is it? It's this. Just before we drop into the intro here, you can turn off warping and just kind of let that overlap here. And I want to give this a really long delay tail. Black hole is the go-to for this. And maybe we also want to use that crash. Did we get a crash? I don't think I did actually. I think I got a sweep. So we can use this sweep and then just turn off warping. And we can just fade that in a little like this. That ARP needs to fade in even less, obviously. So I could probably start it a bit earlier, like this, and just bring this filter all the way down. this like over here too. And I think dropping this vocal in somewhere here is a good idea. Maybe we can put it around over here. Okay, and I want to create some sort of hint that there's going to be a change in energy over here. We're dropping into this like main section. So I want to take out that kick drum. Yeah, let's take it out for like a full bar. And let's use that sweep again. So that duduk, maybe we can use it as like almost like a fill. So again, taking out this kick drum and maybe taking out some of the sub bass. Use this open hi-hat over here to add some energy. And this shaker loop, I don't want to just bring it in the way it is. I'm going to fade that in. So let's hear this now. And we can probably use this vocal again, maybe in a similar position as before. So I'm going to highlight from this bar and just place it over here. And then we've got yeah, let's got some more vocals here. Let's drop that one in there. And we could probably place these a little more, almost like in a pattern. So we have this duduk happening, then we have this vocal, and maybe we can have another duduk. It goes over there or something. Thinking of pasting this here. Maybe there. this looks like a good spot, because we have this new lead coming in. I don't want to kind of take attention away from this new lead with the duduk. So let's hear how it sounds too. And both of these I want to fade in a bit more gracefully. It comes in. That duduk over here, and this vocal over here. No, not there. Maybe it does sound okay to hear this duduk. Yeah, fading this in with 100% wet reverb, I think is kind of just brings it in a bit more gently. Sound better to have this just continue to rise and get brighter. And maybe what I want to do is instead of doing this full sequence here, rather repeat these two sections and then have this as the final part of the track, really. And then we can bring in our like little vocal samples and stuff. Let's just copy it from this section. Maybe what we can do is bring them in here, and yeah. could probably use the sweep over here. Okay, another little trick we're going to do is just to create some fast transitions, because some of the transitions still feel like they need a bit of effects on them. A nice way to do that is to use a really bright and long reverb and basically send the whole track to it and automate it in and out. If you're not following, just watch and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to use this B channel and I'm going to leave the delay on there. I'm going to set it to leave it on 3 and then bring up that feedback really long. And then another thing I'm going to be using is, again, black hole. Place that before there. And I'm going to be using an EQ8. And I only really want the high frequencies from the track, so I'm going to take it up to about 1K. And now if I send both of these channels, both of these buses, to our B channel and then play it. Set this to 100% dry wet. And here it gets pretty crazy. Let's make it even brighter. And let's just turn off that delay quick. Yeah, I like that. Let's add just a plain old reverb after that, because I really want to like blur the sound. Set that to 100% again. Make a really long decay. Okay, and then I want to set this delay to ping pong. And the reason for that is I'm going to be using a utility to control this breathy reverb just for like transitions. So this utility here, if we take this and automate it on and then turn it off, what happens is you get this really nice kind of panning effect that we're using, creating the material from our track so it fits the track perfectly. Let's hear how it sounds in the mix. And I want to use this wherever my sweep. Okay, so we've got the sweep here and the string over there. Let's use this like going from the intro into this ARP section. Oh no, it's not a good place. Let's look at this main section here. Here we go. That's probably a good spot. Oops, just like this. And then I want to kind of let this grow from this point. And then I think lastly this ARP needs a little bit more automation through this section. Maybe what we can do is turn on some unison, or yeah. No, let's not do that. Let's maybe turn on the vibrato. So yeah, we can automate that vibrato to just grow through this whole section, and it gets more and more intense. Okay, so now what I want to do is we're going to throw like a little bit of master on it, and that's just to basically push up the volume as loud as we can go without distorting the sound. And with Ableton, usually I'll be using like a different type of limiter, maybe Ozone's maximizer I really like, but the purpose of this, you know, we're only using Ableton plugins. I prefer to just use a soft clipper and push it up as loud as I can. So take the loudest part of the track. You can hear there it starts to distort, so what I want to do is back it off like probably about 5 dB from the point of distortion. So I think that sounds good. And then I think it's really important to reference. So let's just to get a very quick mix down and make sure that this track doesn't sound completely different to other tracks that have been released out in the wild that sound good and DJs have been playing. I'm going to use one of my tracks. Let's just use maybe Day 1. That's also got like an arpeggio in it and sustained bass line. Yeah, let's drag this in and then kind of compare the drums and the levels. How I like to reference is to basically drop it in here and then turn the channel off, right click, hit a key map, and then hit this button. And now when I tap it, it solos this, but I need to make sure that we don't send it out the master, straight out, so that it doesn't go through our mastering chain. And then okay, so I just need to make sure you turn off warping. So when I compare these, the thing I'm noticing is that my hats sound like they're maybe a little bit quiet in this. And overall, I think the bass sounds pretty similar. Yeah, let's bring up our hats ever so slightly. We don't want to throw off the balance of our track. We can't like set them exact same volume as our reference because it doesn't make sense, because all the elements are slightly different or pretty different. And it also helps to just try out different tracks. This track has a bit more similar like style. Let's just go to the Climax here. Yeah, so I think balance-wise, if we just have a look at this on Span. So Span is the only third-party plugin I'm going to be using, but it is a free plugin, so you can go download it for free. And I just want to kind of look at the balance of the reference on Span and compare it to this track I'm working on now. So let's just have a look at it. I think this is actually an old version of it. Yeah, so if we just look at Span, this is the sort of shape I'm going for, where we've got the loudest peak being the sub. Then the mid-range is like, well, in this track it's a pretty busy mid-range, but usually the mid-range will be as loud as the sub or maybe a little quieter. But the overall curve should be almost like a smile. And if you set it to stereo mastering, you can see that it's a bit more of an average curve, and this is the sort of curve I'm going for. So let's just have a look at this. Okay, so we seem to have a little bit of a gap in the mix there, and I think it's where this mid bass is sitting. We can probably turn down the sub a little bit. So you can see the area I'm looking at is pretty much around here, which is where this mid bass sits. You gotta just keep adjusting, and ideally you don't want to do this in the same session, so I might come back for a second one on this, but I think I'm pretty happy with the way the mix sounds at the moment, and I think it's time to reveal what the full track sounds like. So yeah, let's listen to the whole thing. I'll open this up and okay, yeah, so let's listen to the full thing and see how it turned out. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Yeah, so I think that turned out pretty nicely for a 2-hour effort. Hopefully you guys learned a lot from that and you enjoyed making the song with me. If you did, we've got a couple more courses that I've done with PML where we do a similar thing, but a lot more in depth. And yeah, there's like 4 hours long, I think, per course. So yeah, check out my start to finish courses on PML. And yeah, there's also a bunch of other stuff there that could be really helpful for you. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you at the next one. Goodbye.